All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're unpacking a really fascinating breakdown that takes a high stakes sci fi thriller and uses it to deliver a pretty hard hitting critique of our modern reality. We're going to walk through the source materials step by step, starting with the completely wild fictional universe it builds and ending with the incredibly provocative real world conclusions the creator draws from it. It's a bit of a reality check, so buckle up. So, right off the bat, the creator hooks us with this wild thought experiment. Imagine if your money was literally the time you had left to live. Like if hitting zero in your checking account meant instant death. Seriously, think about the cash in your bank account right now. Whether that's 50 bucks or 50 grand, what if that number was actually your remaining lifespan ticking away on your forearm? How would you live your life today? What would you be doing right this very second? That question is really the foundation for this whole analysis.
This brings us to the brilliant core mechanic of the movie In Time. The premise is that in the year 2169, science has actually achieved immortality, but, at a massive cost. Humans are genetically engineered to just stop aging at 25. But here's the massive catch. On your 25th birthday, a neon digital clock on your arm activates with exactly 1 year of time on it. From that moment on, time is the literal currency. You don't work for a paycheck anymore. You're paying for your morning coffee with minutes. You pay your rent with months. And if that clock hits zero, you die instantly. No second chances.
As you can probably guess, a deeply terrifying economy emerges from this, creating this huge class divide. On one side, you've got the ghetto, where the poor live in constant low-level panic, operating on just days or sometimes literally hours. The video highlights how they literally run everywhere because every single second actually counts. On the flip side is New Greenwich, home to the 1% elite. These people have amassed millennia of time. They live these super luxurious, incredibly slow-paced lives because, well, they literally have all the time in the world. And that introduces us to our protagonist, Will, a young factory worker living in the ghetto. 23 hours. That is all Will has on his personal clock when we meet him. His lifespan is constantly hovering dangerously close to zero. He and his mother, who by the way also looks 25 because of the genetic engineering, are caught in this relentless daily grind. They're sweating in factories every single day just to earn enough hours to wake up the next morning. Now, what's really gut-wrenching is how this brutal day-to-day survival can be shattered instantly by unannounced inflation. One day, Will goes to buy a coffee and the prices suddenly jumped from 3 minutes of life to 4 minutes. Later on, his mother tries to catch a bus home, only to find the fare has abruptly doubled from 1 hour to 2. Since she doesn't have the time to pay, she's forced to sprint home. Will realizes what's happening and runs to meet her, desperately trying to transfer some of his time to save her, but they miss each other by a single second. Her clock hits zero and she literally dies in his arms. Absolutely devastated, Will ends up crossing paths with a guy named Henry Hamilton in a local bar. Hamilton is a 105-year-old elite from New Greenwich who basically wandered into the ghetto. And Hamilton drops a terrifying truth bomb. The system is completely artificially rigged. The elites intentionally raise prices to enforce scarcity. They do it to make sure the poor never, ever accumulate enough time to stop working for them. Hamilton is just exhausted by his centuries of life, and he delivers this chilling confession, expressing absolute disgust at a system where his immortality is directly fueled by the literal deaths of the poor. After confessing all this, Hamilton makes a final drastic choice. While Will is sleeping, Hamilton transfers his entire remaining fortune, 116 years, directly to Will. He leaves a message that just says, "Don't waste my time." And then he lets his own clock run out, plummeting off a bridge to his death. Will wakes up with over a century on his arm. That is a staggering, unheard of amount of wealth in the ghetto. It radically alters his destiny for sure, but it also paints a massive target on his back from the authorities, who are known as timekeepers. So what do you do when you suddenly have a century of life? Will decides to rebel. He burns an entire year of his life just paying the exorbitant tolls to cross the 12 borders into the elite zone of New Greenwich. Once he's in, he infiltrates a high-stakes poker game, uses his street-smart gambling skills, and actually wins 1,100 years from a massive elite time banker named Philippe. Naturally, the authorities corner him at a party shortly after, so Will takes Philippe's daughter, Sylvia, hostage, using her as a human shield to escape back into the ghetto. Now, this kidnapping actually sparks a really unlikely alliance. Once she's in the ghetto, Sylvia sees the brutal reality of the poor firsthand, and it hits her that her father's massive wealth is built directly on their suffering. So they decide to pull a total Robin Hood. They start robbing her father's time banks and distributing those stolen years directly to the impoverished citizens. But, the elites aren't going to take that lying down. They simply counter the robberies by artificially jacking up inflation, which essentially renders all that stolen time worthless and keeps the poor trapped right back in survival mode. Realizing that stealing a few thousand years here and there isn't actually going to break the system, Will and Sylvia decide to go for the whole shebang, the nuclear option. They target Philippe's personal vault and steal his million-year time capsule. They take this unimaginable amount of time and inject it directly into the ghetto. Suddenly, everybody has years on their clocks. The immediate result? The poor finally simply stop working. The factories shut down, the system of forced labor completely collapses, and the elite's control over the population is totally shattered. Okay, so here is where the explainer makes a really crucial pivot. The creator uses this cinematic climax to smash the fourth wall and make a direct, hard-hitting claim about our actual society. The argument here is that this movie isn't just cool sci-fi fiction, it's actually a direct mirror of our real-world capitalist structure. According to the source, the story of Will and the Timekeepers is literally the reality of your life and mine. Let's unpack what the creator refers to as the real-world matrix. The argument is that, just like the people in the ghetto, 90% of the modern population acts as wage slaves just to survive. The source contends that scarcity, the lack of money, housing, or resources, isn't natural. It's an intentionally designed system. Why? Well, to keep the middle and lower classes in a perpetual state of exhaustion and panic. Think about it. If you're too busy working just to pay rent, you never really have the energy to stop and question who actually made the rules, right? Furthermore, the creator argues this whole system survives by feeding the masses a false hope, the illusion that if you just work hard enough, you might one day become the 1% exception. Which brings us to this profound shift in perspective presented by the source. The creator argues that when you clock in for a job you absolutely hate just to pay your bills, you aren't just trading your skills or your labor, you are permanently trading away pieces of your finite life energy. Every single hour you spend doing something you despise just to survive is an hour closer to your inevitable death, and it's an hour that you can never, ever get back. To really drive this home, the creator hits the audience with some chilling math. If you assume an average lifespan, and let's say you're currently in your mid-20s, you've likely already burned through a massive chunk of your time. The source estimates you probably only have about 15,000 days left before your clock hits zero. Just 15,000 days. When you start viewing your life in days rather than years, wow, the urgency of how you spend your time becomes terrifyingly stark, doesn't it? So the big question is, how does someone actually escape this trap? The source highlights two distinct paths people try to take. First, you have folks who try to escape by ignoring the system entirely, like monks and ascetics. But the creator argues that just giving up your stuff or running away into the woods doesn't actually work. You remain trapped internally, because avoiding reality doesn't change reality. Then you have what the creator calls the glitch seekers. These are the people who realize that true freedom requires deeply understanding the rules of the matrix. You have to understand it so completely that you can find its flaws and strategically exploit them. And the creator claims to have found this exact glitch, operating on the core belief that literally every system has a vulnerability. To back this up, they share their own personal story in the source material, explaining how they actually abandoned a highly prestigious medical degree, giving up thousands of dollars in years of preparation. Why? Because they realized they were just entering another, slightly more comfortable level of the trap. By stepping away and meticulously analyzing the system, they claim to have forged a truly free life. As we wrap up, the source concludes with a very direct pitch, basically presenting you with two choices. Path one is the status quo. You pay with 40-plus years of your labor, and the expected outcome is a lifetime stuck in survival mode, built entirely on false hope. Path two is checking out the creator's course or book. The cost there? A few dollars and maybe 4 to 5 hours of your time. The expected outcome, according to the creator, is a detailed roadmap that will shift your perspective, teach you exactly how the game is rigged, and show you how to finally stop wasting your life and escape the system. So I'm going to leave you with this final provocative question derived from the source material. Knowing that time is your only true currency and realizing you have a finite, rapidly shrinking window, how will you choose to spend your remaining 15,000 days? Are you going to keep running on that treadmill, letting the system dictate your worth? Or are you finally going to look down at the clock on your arm? Thanks so much for joining us for this explainer, and we will see you on the next one.